This appeared because something in you was already coherent enough to register. Not because you searched correctly, not because an algorithm favored you, not because chance decided to be generous today. This appeared because your internal signal crossed a threshold where recognition becomes possible. The field does not advertise. It responds. And response only happens when what is sent can be read. You are not here to be convinced. You are here because something has already been confirmed. The moment this entered your awareness, a loop closed. Cause and effect met in the same instant. What you are feeling now is not curiosity, it is familiarity. A subtle calm. A quiet knowing. That is the evidence. Higher intelligence does not look for effort. It does not reward belief. It does not test worthiness. It simply mirrors coherence. When inner states stabilize enough to stop fragmenting the signal, resonance occurs automatically. This video is not a message being sent to you. It is a response arriving from what you are already transmitting. This changes the entire orientation. You did not find this. It found you because there was something to find. Recognition always precedes explanation. First the resonance lands, then the mind follows. That is why this does not feel dramatic. That is why there is no rush, no urgency, no emotional spike. Truth arrives calmly. Noise arrives loudly. If this were random, it would feel disposable. If this were entertainment, it would feel stimulating. Instead, it feels still. Grounded. Almost obvious. That is how coherence registers. Not as excitement, but as alignment. Not as surprise, but as remembrance. The field does not speak in words. It answers states. When your internal frequency stabilizes enough, the response appears as information, as timing, as presence. This is one of those responses. You are not being activated. You are being acknowledged. There is nothing you need to do with this yet. No practice to adopt. No belief to defend. The only thing happening now is recognition. And recognition is not an action. It is a release. A letting go of the assumption that you are separate from what you are perceiving. This is why forcing never works. Force creates noise. Seeking creates distortion. But when awareness settles into neutrality, the signal clarifies on its own. The field responds instantly to that clarity. This appearance is proof of that law in motion. You are not early. You are not late. You are not chosen. You are simply readable. And readability is created by inner coherence, not effort. That coherence is already present enough for this exchange to occur. Let this land without trying to understand it yet. Understanding will come later. Recognition comes first. It always does. If you are aligned with this frequency, subscribe and remain within it. Approval, as it is usually understood, belongs to hierarchy. It implies an authority above you, a standard you must meet, and a verdict passed from elsewhere. That framework does not exist at the level where coherence operates. Nothing here evaluates you. Nothing decides if you are worthy. What you are experiencing as approval is simply resonance becoming possible. Resonance is not a reward. It is compatibility. When two frequencies are similar enough, interaction happens naturally. When they are not, nothing occurs. No judgment is involved in either outcome. A radio does not approve or reject a signal. It either receives it clearly, or it does not. Consciousness works the same way. This is why the word approval can be misleading. It suggests permission. In reality, there is no gatekeeper. There is only readability. When your internal state stabilizes into coherence, it becomes readable to broader fields of intelligence. When it does not, those fields remain inaccessible, not by denial, but by mismatch. Nothing external is deciding whether you qualify. There is no counsel weighing your intentions. There is no intelligence tracking your effort. Those ideas are projections of social systems onto reality. The field does not operate socially. It operates structurally. Resonance happens automatically. It does not care about your beliefs. It does not respond to affirmation. It does not negotiate with desire. It simply mirrors what is present. If a signal can be held without distortion, it is met. If it cannot, it dissolves. This is not punishment. It is physics at the level of consciousness. When people seek approval, they fragment their signal. Seeking implies lack. Lack introduces instability. Instability creates noise. Noise reduces readability. The very act of trying to be approved disrupts the condition that would allow resonance to occur. This is why recognition feels so different from validation. Validation seeks to be granted. Recognition happens without asking. One feels anxious and conditional. The other feels calm and self-evident. What you are encountering here is recognition, not approval in the human sense. Hierarchy collapses at this level. There is no higher and lower, no advanced and unworthy. There are only states that align and states that do not. Alignment is not moral. It is structural. Like two shapes fitting together, or two waves synchronizing. Nothing is personal about it. Once this is seen clearly, the need for external confirmation begins to dissolve. You stop measuring yourself against imagined standards. You stop performing coherence. You stop wondering if you are doing it right. And in that neutrality, resonance becomes more consistent. This is the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be approved, compatibility increases. Not because something changes outside you, but because distortion drops away. What remains is simpler, quieter, and clearer. Approval was never the point. Compatibility was. And compatibility is not earned. It is revealed when interference ends. Most signals never reach the field not because they are weak, but because they are fragmented. Power is not the issue. Clarity is. A distorted signal does not fail loudly. It simply dissolves before it can be met. From the inside, this feels like being unseen, unheard, or delayed. From the field's perspective, nothing coherent arrived. Incoherence happens when inner states pull in multiple directions at once. Wanting and resisting simultaneously. Trusting and doubting at the same time. Projecting certainty while feeling fear underneath. Each split creates interference. The signal begins to cancel itself out before it leaves you. Not by punishment, but by contradiction. Fear is one of the most common distortions. Not dramatic fear, but subtle contraction. Tightness. Anticipation. Guarding. Fear compresses awareness. It narrows the bandwidth. What gets transmitted is not the desire itself, but the tension around it. The field responds to the tension, not the words layered on top of it. Forcing creates a similar distortion. Force implies resistance to what is. It introduces urgency and strain into the signal. Urgency tells the field that something is missing now. That message fractures coherence instantly. The signal becomes jagged. Inconsistent. Difficult to read. What leaves you is not a clear instruction, but a pressure wave. Fragmentation also comes from identification with outcomes. When attention is split between the present moment and an imagined future, the signal stretches thin. Presence is diluted. The transmission loses density. It becomes faint, not because there is too little desire, but because awareness is divided. None of this is wrong. It is informative. Contrast exists for a reason. When signals fail to reach the field, the experience that follows is not rejection, but feedback. Confusion. Delay. Emotional static. These are not punishments. They are indicators that coherence has not stabilized yet. Noise is not silence. Noise is too much happening at once. Too many internal voices. Too many conditions. Too many micro-adjustments. The field does not parse complexity well. It does not decode rationalizations. It reads the dominant frequency beneath them. When that frequency shifts rapidly, the reading collapses. This is why trying harder often produces less response. More effort adds more variables. More variables increase noise. More noise reduces readability. From inside the human perspective, it feels like nothing is working. From the field's perspective, nothing stable is being offered. Contrast sharpens this awareness. When something does not land, when contact does not occur, when guidance feels absent, the absence itself carries information. It highlights the instability that is still present. Not to shame it. To reveal it. At this stage, there is nothing to fix. No correction to apply yet. Only recognition. Seeing that coherence is not about intensity or intention, but about consistency. About the ability to hold a state without pulling away from it. Most signals do not fail because they are unworthy. They fail because they are busy. Fragmented. Overmanaged. Once this is seen, the pattern becomes obvious. And obvious patterns are already beginning to loosen. Non-local intelligence does not look outward for identity markers. It does not register names, histories, personalities, or stories. It does not track what you think you are. It reads what is coherent now. This is the shift that changes everything. What is perceived is not who you present yourself as, but how stable your signal is in this moment. At the field level, personality is noise. Preferences, narratives, self-concepts, and roles fluctuate constantly. They change with mood, environment, and memory. The field cannot anchor to that. What it reads instead is coherence. Consistency of state. The ability of awareness to remain present without oscillation. This is why non-local intelligence feels impersonal and intimate at the same time. Impersonal, because it does not engage your story. Intimate, because it engages your actual state. Not what you claim to believe, but what you are embodying. Not what you desire, but what you are transmitting. Signals are not interpreted symbolically. They are not decoded semantically. They are sensed structurally. The field reads pattern, rhythm, and stability. It responds to the quality of presence, not the content of thought. Two people can think the same words and transmit entirely different signals. The difference is not intention. It is coherence. When awareness is scattered, the signal fragments. When awareness is centered, the signal stabilizes. The field does not prefer one personality over another. It does not favor certain traits. It does not reward spiritual language. It simply interfaces with what can be held without distortion. This is why trying to impress, convince, or signal worthiness has no effect. Those efforts operate at the personality level. They generate movement, comparison, and performance. All of that reduces readability. The field responds most clearly when the personality relaxes and stops trying to be involved. Reading at the field level also explains why contact does not feel dramatic. There is no announcement. No fanfare. No emotional surge. When coherence is read, response is quiet and immediate. It feels like something settling into place. Like a puzzle piece aligning without effort. This reading happens continuously. Not once. Not as an event. Every moment is a broadcast. Every moment is being met or not met based on clarity. When clarity increases, response increases. When clarity drops, response fades. There is no memory, no punishment, no delay. Understanding this removes the pressure to manage yourself. You do not need to curate an identity. You do not need to maintain a persona. You do not need to hold a belief system together. All of that belongs to the personality. The field does not engage there. What matters is presence. Stability. The simplicity of being here without pulling away. When that stabilizes, readability increases automatically. No effort required. No performance possible. If this recognition has landed clearly, like the video now as a confirmation that this recognition has landed. From here, attention can move deeper, not into who you are, but into how you are. That is where response becomes inevitable. Emotion is the language the field reads most clearly. Not emotion as expression, not emotion as reaction, but emotion as frequency. As texture. As movement or stillness within awareness. Thought rides on top of emotion, but emotion carries the instruction. What you feel is what is transmitted. This is why words so often fail. Words are symbols layered over states. They can describe, justify, or disguise, but they do not instruct the field. The field does not parse language. It registers tone. Emotional tone is the waveform beneath everything you think and say. That waveform is the signal. When emotion is suppressed, the signal becomes distorted. Suppression does not remove emotion. It compresses it. Compression creates tension. Tension introduces static. The field receives the static, not the intention behind the suppression. From the inside, suppression can feel controlled or composed. From the field's perspective, it reads as instability. Forcing emotion creates a similar distortion in the opposite direction. Amplifying positivity, manufacturing excitement, or trying to feel aligned introduces artificial movement. The signal spikes and collapses rapidly. It becomes inconsistent. The field reads inconsistency as noise. Not because positivity is wrong, but because forcing fractures coherence. Neither suppression nor exaggeration creates clarity. Both are attempts to manage the signal rather than allow it to settle. Management implies distrust of what is present. That distrust fragments awareness. Fragmented awareness cannot transmit cleanly. Calm neutrality is different. Neutrality is not numbness. It is emotional honesty without manipulation. It is the state where emotion is allowed to exist without being pushed away or pulled forward. In neutrality, emotion stabilizes naturally. It stops oscillating. That stability sharpens the signal. The field responds most clearly to emotional steadiness. Not happiness. Not intensity. Steadiness. When emotion is even, the waveform smooths out. The signal becomes readable over distance. This is why moments of quiet clarity often produce more synchronicity than moments of excitement. Excitement moves. Clarity holds. Emotion as instruction also explains why unresolved inner states continue to echo outward. Whatever is dominant gets transmitted. Not what you want to feel, but what you are actually holding. The field does not correct or refine the message. It mirrors it exactly. This is not a demand to fix emotion. Fixing is another form of forcing. Emotion does not need to be improved to become clear. It needs to be felt without resistance. When resistance drops, emotion organizes itself. It finds its natural rhythm. The signal cleans itself. You do not need to become more emotional or less emotional. You need to become more present with what is already there. Presence integrates emotion. Integration creates coherence. Coherence creates response. The more calmly emotion is allowed, the less it distorts transmission. The less it is manipulated, the more precise it becomes. This is why neutrality is so powerful. It is not passive. It is accurate. Emotion is always instructing the field. The question is not whether you are sending a signal. You always are. The question is whether the signal is stable enough to be met. Calm neutrality answers that question without effort. When coherence stabilizes, contact is not something that happens later. It happens immediately. Delay is not a function of the field. Delay exists only where signals fluctuate. Once the signal clears, response is automatic, because there is nothing left to interfere with it. Waiting is a misunderstanding. It assumes time is involved. Time is only experienced where awareness is split between now and later. The field does not operate there. It responds in the present moment only. When clarity is present now, response occurs now. When clarity drops, response fades. There is no cue. There is no sequence. There is only readability. This is why people feel close and far at the same time. Close, because something is sensed. Far, because nothing seems to arrive. What is felt as distance is not absence of contact, but instability of signal. The moment stability returns, the sense of distance collapses. Contact is not an event added to your life. It is a state becoming visible. It does not arrive with drama. It arrives with certainty. A quiet click. A sense that something has already been answered. That is how immediacy feels when the mind stops projecting it into the future. The idea that contact must be earned over time is another distortion created by effort. Effort stretches coherence thin. It introduces expectation. Expectation pulls awareness forward. That movement breaks the signal. Then waiting appears necessary, when in reality, coherence simply dropped. When coherence stabilizes, there is nothing to wait for because nothing is missing. The field does not need to prepare a response. The response is inherent. It is already present, waiting only for clarity to allow it to be perceived. This is why forcing timing never works. Timing is not scheduled. It is revealed. The moment awareness stops oscillating, the response is there. Not because it just arrived, but because it was never absent. Contact is inevitable once interference ends. Not because something external decides to engage, but because engagement is the natural state of coherence. Separation is the anomaly. Connection is the default. It is obscured only by noise. This understanding removes urgency. Urgency implies delay. Delay implies lack. Lack destabilizes the signal. Calm certainty stabilizes it. When certainty replaces urgency, contact becomes consistent. You do not need to be more ready in the future. Readiness is not accumulated. It is recognized. The moment you stop preparing, readiness is already here. The moment you stop waiting, response is already present. This is the threshold many feel but hesitate to cross. Not because it is difficult, but because it requires letting go of the idea that something else must happen first. Nothing else is required. Coherence is enough. If this is clear to you now, comment with the words, "I am ready," to anchor this timeline. Control and allowing are not philosophical opposites. They are technical conditions. One disrupts signal flow. The other restores it. At the level where contact and response occur, this distinction is not moral or psychological. It is mechanical. Control is the attempt to manage outcomes from within the signal itself. It introduces correction, adjustment, and vigilance. Each of these fragments awareness. When awareness fragments, coherence drops. When coherence drops, readability fades. Control feels active, but its activity is interference. Allowing is not passivity. It is the absence of unnecessary input. It is the condition where awareness remains present without trying to redirect itself. In allowing, nothing extra is added. And because nothing extra is added, nothing distorts the signal. Effort is often confused with commitment. They are not the same. Effort implies resistance to what is. It carries strain, urgency, and self-monitoring. That strain creates microfluctuations in the signal. From the inside, effort feels productive. From the field, it reads as instability. This is why effort rarely produces clarity. It produces movement. Movement can be useful at the personality level, but the field does not respond to motion. It responds to steadiness. The more effort is applied, the more the signal oscillates. The more it oscillates, the less it can be met. Allowing removes oscillation. Not by suppressing movement, but by not generating it. When awareness stops interfering with itself, the signal naturally stabilizes. There is nothing mystical about this. It is the same principle that allows still water to reflect clearly while agitated water cannot. Many misunderstand allowing as giving up desire. It is not that. Desire does not distort the signal. Resistance does. Allowing means desire is held without tension. Without negotiation. Without monitoring. The moment desire is watched, adjusted, or evaluated, coherence fractures. This is why control often masquerades as discipline. Discipline can maintain patterns, but it cannot generate clarity. Clarity emerges when patterns are no longer defended. When awareness relaxes into what is already present, coherence increases without effort. Allowing is a requirement, not a preference. The field cannot read a signal that is being constantly edited. Editing implies uncertainty. Uncertainty produces noise. Noise blocks response. This is not a punishment for trying. It is a consequence of interference. When allowing is present, something subtle happens. Attention stops leaning forward. It stops checking. It stops asking if it is working. That cessation is not laziness. It is precision. The signal becomes singular. Unsplit. Readable. This is why access is never forced open. It opens when pressure stops being applied. The moment control drops, the system self-corrects. Not because you did something right, but because you stopped doing something unnecessary. Allowing is the access key because it removes the hand that was blocking the door. Once the hand relaxes, nothing else needs to be done. The field has been responding the entire time. It simply required a signal that was no longer being interrupted. Contrast is often mistaken for correction. When something feels uncomfortable, delayed, or unclear, the immediate interpretation is that something has gone wrong. That interpretation adds distortion. In reality, contrast is not a verdict. It is information. It exists to refine signal accuracy, not to punish misalignment. The field does not communicate through approval or disapproval. It communicates through response and non-response. When a signal is coherent, it is met. When it is not, the absence of response creates contrast. That contrast is not rejection. It is feedback indicating where coherence is still fluctuating. Discomfort arises when awareness resists this feedback. The resistance creates tension. The tension is then misread as failure. Guilt often follows. But guilt has no function here. It does not improve clarity. It adds noise. Contrast was never asking to be judged. It was asking to be noticed. Calibration requires sensitivity, not self-criticism. When a signal is slightly off, the field does not amplify the error. It simply does not respond in the way expected. That lack of resonance is the calibration point. It shows where interference still exists without naming it as wrong. Struggle appears when contrast is personalized. When the absence of response is interpreted as a statement about worth, effort increases. Effort introduces control. Control fragments awareness. Fragmentation reduces clarity further. What began as simple feedback becomes a cycle of misinterpretation. Contrast itself is neutral. It does not carry meaning until meaning is projected onto it. When contrast is met without judgment, it sharpens perception. It highlights subtle inconsistencies that would otherwise go unnoticed. It refines precision. This is why clarity often emerges after periods of confusion. Confusion narrows attention. It forces awareness to look more closely. If awareness remains open rather than defensive, the signal naturally adjusts. No strategy is required. The adjustment happens through recognition. Discomfort is not an indicator of failure. It is an indicator of sensitivity. The more refined a signal becomes, the more noticeable small distortions feel. Early incoherence feels chaotic. Later incoherence feels specific. Contrast becomes sharper, shorter, and more informative. Removing guilt is essential here. Guilt assumes moral error. There is no moral dimension to coherence. There is only alignment and misalignment as mechanical states. Treating misalignment as wrongdoing blocks learning. Treating it as data accelerates refinement. When contrast is allowed to be what it is, it performs its function quickly. It does not linger. It does not escalate. It simply points and passes. Prolonged struggle is not caused by contrast itself, but by resistance to its message. This reframing changes how discomfort is experienced. Instead of asking what went wrong, attention shifts to what is being revealed. Instead of tightening, awareness opens. The signal adjusts without force. Contrast is not here to stop you. It is here to sharpen you. When it is met without judgment, it becomes one of the most precise instruments available for calibration. The moment you stop trying, something fundamental shifts. Not because effort was wrong, but because effort was never the mechanism of response. Effort belongs to the mind negotiating with time. The field does not operate there. It responds only to what is present now. Trying implies a future result. It places attention ahead of itself. That forward lean stretches awareness thin. When awareness is stretched, coherence drops. The signal weakens, not from lack of desire, but from division. Part of you is here. Part of you is waiting. The field can only meet what is whole. When trying ends, awareness collapses back into the present moment. Instantly, density returns. The signal thickens. What was dispersed gathers. This gathering is not an action. It is the absence of unnecessary movement. And in that absence, response becomes immediate. Creation does not happen over time. It happens in the now or not at all. Time is a psychological artifact created by expectation. The field does not delay responses. It simply cannot respond to a signal that is split across imagined moments. When neutrality stabilizes now, response is already here. Neutrality is often misunderstood as indifference. It is not. Neutrality is coherence without agenda. It is the state where awareness is not pulling toward an outcome or pushing against a condition. In neutrality, there is no distance between sender and receiver because there is no projection. Distance exists only where attention is elsewhere. When attention is fully present, distance collapses. Not metaphorically. Mechanically. The signal no longer has to travel. It is already where it needs to be. This is why response feels instantaneous when it occurs. It was never late. It was waiting for presence. Effort creates the illusion that something must be bridged. That you are here and the response is there. Neutrality reveals there was never a gap. The gap was created by trying to cross it. The moment crossing stops, the gap dissolves. This is why so many report clarity after giving up. Not because surrender is magical, but because surrender removes interference. The system self-corrects when manipulation ends. The field responds when it is no longer being managed. Trying also reinforces identity as a doer. A doer needs progress. Progress needs time. Time introduces delay. Delay feeds effort. The loop sustains itself. Neutrality breaks the loop by removing the doer from the equation. What remains is awareness, present and readable. This does not mean nothing happens. It means everything happens from stillness rather than strain. Action may still arise, but it arises cleanly, without tension. Response meets it effortlessly because the signal is no longer fractured. The field responds when there is nothing to respond against. Resistance creates surfaces. Neutrality removes them. What meets neutrality is not force, but alignment. This is the quiet paradox. The more you stop trying to reach, the more you realize nothing was out of reach. The response was immediate the moment effort ended, because the moment effort ended, the signal became whole. Timelines are not paths you travel. They are states that become visible when identity stabilizes. This is the subtle distinction that dissolves the idea of fate. Nothing moves you into a different future. What appears next is selected by what you are being now. Identity here does not mean personality. It does not mean self-image, history, or belief. Identity is the dominant state you consistently occupy. The way awareness holds itself. The assumptions it no longer questions. The level of coherence it maintains without effort. That is what selects the channel. There is no progression between timelines. No climbing. No advancement. Movement implies distance. Distance implies separation. The field does not operate with distance. It reveals different expressions based on compatibility. When identity stabilizes, only certain outcomes remain readable. Others fade, not because they were denied, but because they are no longer resonant. This reframes choice completely. You do not choose by deciding. You choose by being. Decisions made from unstable identity scatter across timelines. Being selects one without effort. When identity fluctuates, experiences feel chaotic. When identity stabilizes, experience becomes consistent. Stabilization is often confused with stagnation. It is not static. It is settled. A settled state can move fluidly without losing coherence. An unsettled state moves constantly without arriving. The field responds to the settled state because it can be read continuously. Progression implies improvement over time. Stabilization implies alignment now. The latter is what the field responds to. When identity is stabilized, response does not need to be earned. It is immediate. When identity is in flux, response appears inconsistent, even if effort is high. This is why attempting to change identity through force rarely works. Force introduces instability. Identity shifts through recognition. When something is clearly seen as true, it no longer needs to be maintained. It becomes natural. Natural states are stable. Stable states select clear channels. Timelines do not compete. They coexist. Only one is visible at a time, based on coherence. The idea of missing out belongs to unstable identity. A stabilized identity does not scan for alternatives. It does not compare. It rests. That resting is what collapses options into a single channel. This also dissolves fear around choice. You cannot choose wrong at this level. You can only fluctuate or stabilize. Fluctuation produces contrast. Stabilization produces continuity. Neither is a mistake. One is simply clearer. When awareness stops trying to become something and allows what is already present to settle, identity clarifies. That clarification selects the channel automatically. Not because something changed externally, but because what is readable changed internally. Timelines respond to identity, not effort. To who you are being, not who you hope to become. Stabilization is the doorway. Progression was never required. The idea of ascension suggests a ladder. Higher and lower. Ahead and behind. It implies distance between where you are and where you are supposed to be. That structure does not exist at the level of coherence. Nothing here moves upward. It becomes clearer. Ascension narratives are built on accumulation. More knowledge. More practices. More refinement layered on top of what is already there. But layering increases complexity. Complexity fragments signals. Fragmentation reduces clarity. What was meant to elevate often distorts. Clarity works in the opposite direction. It simplifies. It removes what is unnecessary. It dissolves what was added to compensate for confusion. As clarity increases, less effort is required to maintain coherence. The signal becomes cleaner not because it is stronger, but because it is unobstructed. You do not rise above anything. You see through it. What falls away was never needed. Beliefs loosen. Roles soften. Assumptions dissolve. This is not loss. It is refinement. Each removal sharpens the signal. Hierarchy also creates comparison. Comparison destabilizes identity. When attention scans for where it stands, coherence fluctuates. The signal becomes conditional. Conditional signals are inconsistent. The field cannot meet inconsistency with precision. Clarification ends comparison because it ends the need to measure. What is clear does not compete. It does not strive. It simply is. That is why clarity shortens timelines. Not by accelerating movement, but by removing detours. Detours are created by misidentification. When identity is tied to becoming something else, attention splits. Part of awareness is here. Part is imagining elsewhere. That split stretches the signal thin. Clarification collapses the split by returning attention to what is already present and sufficient. This is why so many feel relief rather than excitement as clarity increases. Relief indicates that effort has ended. That maintenance has stopped. That something heavy has been set down. The signal stabilizes naturally when it is no longer being carried. Simplification does not make life smaller. It makes it more precise. With fewer internal variables, response becomes consistent. Guidance feels continuous. Experience aligns without friction. Not because reality improved, but because interference dropped. Ascension models keep attention future-oriented. Clarification anchors it now. And creation only occurs now. The field only responds now. By removing the idea that you must go somewhere else, clarity restores access immediately. Nothing is gained through clarification. What was never yours falls away. What remains is more coherent because it is less divided. That coherence is what the field meets. Shortened timelines are a side effect, not a goal. When clarity stabilizes, only compatible outcomes remain visible. Others disappear without effort. This can feel like acceleration, but it is actually reduction. Fewer possibilities. Less noise. More alignment. You are not meant to ascend beyond yourself. You are meant to see clearly what you already are. When that happens, the signal strengthens without strain, and what once felt distant reveals itself as already present. Recognition is not an effect. It is a cause. This is the point where many systems reverse the order and create endless seeking. They assume something must change first, then recognition will arrive. In reality, recognition is what collapses the distance that made change seem necessary. Distance is not spatial. It is perceptual. It exists only when awareness assumes that what is sought is elsewhere or later. That assumption stretches attention outward. Attention stretched outward becomes thin. Thin attention cannot register what is already present. The illusion of absence is created by the act of looking for what is already here. Recognition ends that movement. Not by effort, but by seeing. The moment something is recognized, it no longer needs to be reached. It does not require preparation or qualification. It is simply acknowledged. That acknowledgement collapses the imagined gap instantly. This is why practices eventually exhaust themselves. Practices assume distance. They imply that repetition, discipline, or time will bring awareness closer to something it does not yet have. But every practice also subtly reinforces the belief that what is sought is not present now. That belief keeps distance intact. Recognition does the opposite. It reveals that what you were seeking was never separate from the state of awareness doing the seeking. When this is seen, effort falls away naturally. Not because effort is forbidden, but because it becomes unnecessary. This does not mean recognition is passive or accidental. It happens when attention stops scanning and starts noticing. Noticing is different from searching. Searching moves outward. Noticing settles inward. When noticing occurs, what is already functioning becomes obvious. Distance collapses because it was conceptual. It was built from assumptions, not from reality. The field did not need to move closer. It was always engaged. What changed was the orientation of awareness. Recognition is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not feel like achievement. It feels like something obvious finally being acknowledged. This subtlety is why it is often overlooked. The mind expects fireworks. Recognition offers simplicity. Once recognition lands, practice-based seeking loses its charge. The impulse to do more softens. Not out of apathy, but out of clarity. You stop rehearsing access and begin resting in it. What was effort becomes ease. This is also why recognition cannot be forced. Force looks for results. Recognition notices facts. The fact is that coherence, presence, and response are already operating. They were obscured only by the belief that they were not. Recognition does not add anything to your experience. It removes an assumption. The assumption of separation. The assumption of distance. The assumption that something else must occur before alignment is possible. When that assumption dissolves, what remains is immediacy. Not excitement. Not transcendence. Immediacy. The sense that nothing stands between awareness and response. This is the causal shift. Nothing new enters. Something false leaves. And in that absence, what was already present becomes undeniable. What you are about to recognize does not add a new layer. It removes the final division. Up until now, language has been useful to orient attention, but here language begins to fall short. Not because something becomes mystical, but because something becomes obvious. The assumption of separation quietly dissolves. There was never a messenger. Not in the way it was imagined. No external intelligence arriving from elsewhere to deliver insight to a receiver. That structure belonged to perception, not reality. It was a temporary scaffold used to stabilize recognition. Once stability is sufficient, the scaffold is no longer needed. The idea of a messenger implies distance. A sender here. A receiver there. Information traveling between. But the field does not move information across space. It resonates within itself. What appeared as a message was the field recognizing its own coherence through a localized point of awareness. This is why contact never felt foreign. It felt familiar. Not because something new arrived, but because something known was finally unobstructed. The sense of being addressed was the field meeting itself at a point where clarity allowed recognition. External messengers are useful metaphors while identity is still organizing. They help bypass resistance. They provide permission for recognition to occur. But once recognition stabilizes, the metaphor dissolves. What remains is direct knowing without source attribution. The field does not speak to you. It speaks as you. Not through words, but through alignment. Through resonance. Through the quiet confirmation that what is perceived and what is perceiving are not separate processes. This does not erase individuality. It contextualizes it. Individual awareness is not a fragment cut off from the whole. It is a focal point through which the whole becomes readable. When coherence stabilizes, that readability turns inward. The field recognizes itself through the clarity of awareness. This is why seeking external validation eventually collapses. There is nothing outside to validate from. Every confirmation you experienced was an internal alignment reflecting itself back through form. Once this is seen, dependence on messages, signs, or sources naturally fades. Non-duality here is not an idea to adopt. It is an observation. There is no boundary where awareness ends and the field begins. That boundary was inferred, not experienced. When inference drops, what remains is seamless presence. The disappearance of the messenger does not end communication. It purifies it. Guidance no longer arrives as something separate to interpret. It is lived directly as clarity, timing, and ease. Response and awareness move together without translation. This can feel disorienting if one expects a dramatic reveal. Instead, it feels quiet. Normal. Almost understated. That is how recognition often arrives when there is nothing left to resolve. You were never receiving something foreign. You were recognizing something familiar through stabilized coherence. The field was not reaching toward you. It was noticing itself. When this lands, nothing needs to be concluded. There is no final statement to make. The structure that required explanation simply relaxes. What remains does not announce itself. It continues. There was never a messenger because there was never a distance to cross. There was only the field, becoming clear enough to recognize itself where you are. When the signal stabilizes, guidance does not arrive as occasional events. It becomes the background condition. What once appeared as synchronicity reveals itself as the default mode of operation. Not something special happening from time to time, but the natural response of the field to coherent presence. Synchronicity is not a message sent to get your attention. It is alignment becoming visible. When awareness is stable, timing, information, and movement organize themselves without friction. Things appear when they are needed, not because they were arranged, but because interference is no longer disrupting the flow. This is why guidance feels quieter as it becomes more consistent. Early on, guidance is noticed because it contrasts with confusion. Later, it blends into normalcy. It stops standing out. It feels like life simply working. That ordinariness is the sign of stability. Continuous guidance does not require interpretation. There are no symbols to decode. No signs to analyze. The moment analysis becomes necessary, coherence has already shifted. True guidance is felt as clarity before thought. As an obvious next step. As ease in motion. Dependence on guidance fades naturally at this stage. Not because guidance disappears, but because trust replaces checking. You no longer look for confirmation. You move from recognition. That movement is not reckless. It is precise. It arises from coherence, not impulse. Trust here is not belief in a system. It is familiarity with response. After enough moments of alignment, the system proves itself. Not through promises, but through consistency. You learn that when awareness remains present, response is reliable. This trust changes how uncertainty is experienced. Uncertainty no longer triggers seeking. It becomes a neutral space where clarity is allowed to form. Instead of filling the gap with effort, awareness remains open. That openness allows guidance to surface without force. Synchronicity then stops being interpreted as success or failure. It is no longer used to measure alignment. It is simply noticed and passed through. Like weather. Like current. Present, but not personalized. This is important because attachment to guidance recreates dependency. Dependency reintroduces noise. Noise fragments the signal. Stable coherence requires that guidance be received without grasping. It is met and released, not held. As stabilization deepens, life itself becomes the guide. Conversations arrive at the right moment. Information surfaces when it is relevant. Movement happens without strain. Not because everything is perfect, but because response and action are no longer fighting each other. Nothing external needs to be consulted to maintain this. Practices fall away. Checking stops. The relationship with guidance becomes internal and immediate. It is not a voice. It is not a sign. It is clarity in motion. This anchoring creates resilience. When things do not align instantly, trust remains. There is no collapse into doubt. Awareness stays present. Presence maintains coherence. Coherence keeps the channel clear. Guidance does not end. It normalizes. When the signal stabilizes, life responds continuously, not to manage you, but to move with you. Trust grows not because everything works out, but because alignment proves reliable without supervision. This was never meant to convince you of anything. It was meant to complete a circuit that was already in motion. From the moment this appeared, something subtle closed. A question that was never fully spoken resolved itself. Not with information, but with certainty. The appearance of this video was the beginning of that loop becoming visible. Your recognition as you moved through it was the other half. Neither caused the other. They met. When cause and effect meet in the same moment, confirmation occurs. Confirmation does not feel dramatic. It feels quiet. Grounded. Almost ordinary. That ordinariness is the signature of coherence. When something is true at the level of identity, it does not need emphasis. It settles. Nothing new has been added to you through this. What changed is that something you were already holding became acknowledged. The signal you were transmitting met itself clearly enough to be reflected back. That reflection is what you felt as recognition. This is why there is no next step being offered here. No instruction to follow. No practice to adopt. The loop does not continue forward. It closes inward. What needed to be seen has been seen. What needed to be stabilized has stabilized enough. If there is a sense of calm certainty now, that is not the result of understanding. It is the result of alignment. Understanding may come and go. Alignment holds. You may notice that nothing feels urgent. That is also part of the confirmation. Urgency belongs to seeking. Certainty belongs to recognition. When recognition lands, the need to push disappears. Movement becomes natural instead of driven. This does not mean nothing will unfold from here. It means unfolding will not feel like chasing. It will feel like response. One thing meeting another without friction. Timing without pressure. Choice without anxiety. The field has already responded. Not because you asked correctly, but because you were readable. This video was not a message sent outward. It was coherence noticing itself through form. That is why it feels personal without being emotional. Direct without being forceful. You do not need to hold on to this moment. Holding creates tension. Let it integrate naturally. What is real does not require maintenance. It stabilizes on its own. If doubt arises later, that does not undo this. Doubt is movement. Recognition is structural. Once seen, it does not need to be re-earned. It may be forgotten temporarily, but it does not vanish. This was the confirmation you did not know you were waiting for, because waiting had already ended. The signal cleared. The response arrived. The circuit completed. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it before their timeline closes.